the political power of the earthly rulers could be reduced to a minimum. Consequently, the influence and power of the Amun priesthood continued to grow until the 21st dynasty, c. 1077 BC, by which time the high priests of Amun effectively became rulers over parts of Egypt. Akhenaten's reforms also had a longer-term impact on ancient Egyptian language, and hastened the spread of the spoken late Egyptian language in official writings and speeches. Spoken and written Egyptian diverged early on in Egyptian history, and stayed different over time. During the Amarna period, however, royal and religious texts and inscriptions, including the boundary stelae at Akhenaten or the Amarna letters, started to regularly include more vernacular linguistic elements, such as the definite article or a new possessive form, even though they continued to diverge. These changes brought the spoken and written language closer to one another more systematically than under previous pharaohs of the New Kingdom, while Akhenaten's successors attempted to erase his religious, artistic, and even linguistic changes from history. The new linguistic elements remained a more common part of official texts following the Amarna years, starting with the 19th dynasty. Akhenaten is also recognized as a prophet in the Druze faith. Buildings including temples to the Aten. The new Aten temples had no roof, and the god was thus worshipped in the sunlight, under the open sky, rather than in dark temple enclosures, as had been the previous custom. The Theban buildings were later dismantled by his successors and used as infill for new constructions in the Temple of Karnak, when they were later dismantled by archaeologists. Some 36,000 decorated blocks from the original Aten building here were revealed that preserved many elements of the original relief scenes and inscriptions. One of the most important turning points in the early reign of Amnhotep IV is a speech given by the pharaoh at the beginning of his second regnal year. A copy of the speech survives on one of the pylons at the Karnak temple complex near Thebes. Speaking to the royal court, scribes, or the people, Amnhotep IV said that the gods were ineffective and had ceased their movements, and that their temples had collapsed. The pharaoh contrasted this with the only remaining god, the sun disk Aten, who continued to move and exist forever. Some Egyptologists, such as Donald B. Redford, compared this speech to a proclamation or manifesto, which foreshadowed and explained the pharaoh's later religious reforms centered around the Aten. In his speech, Akhenaten said, "The temples of the gods fallen to ruin, their bodies do not endure, since the time of the ancestors. It is the wise man that knows these things. Behold, I, the king, am speaking so that I might inform you concerning the appearances of the gods. I know their temples, and I am versed in the writings, specifically the inventory of their primeval bodies, and I have watched as they have ceased their appearances, one after the other. All of them have stopped, except the God who gave birth to himself, and no one knows the mystery of how he performs his tasks. This God goes where he pleases, and no one else knows his go-in. I approach him. The things which he has made, how exalted they are. In year 5 of his reign, Amnhotep IV took decisive steps to establish the Aten. As the sole god of Egypt, the pharaoh disbanded the priesthoods of all the other gods, and diverted the income from these cults to support the Aten, to emphasize his complete allegiance to the Aten. The king officially changed his name from Amnhotep IV to Akhenaten Ancient Egyptian, QNJTN, meaning effective for the Aten. Meanwhile, the Aten was becoming a king itself. Artists started to depict him with the trappings of pharaohs, placing his name in cartouches, a rare but not unique occurrence, as the names of Ra-Horakhti and Amun-Ra had also been found enclosed in cartouches and wearing a uraeus, a symbol of kingship. The Aten may also have been the subject of Akhenaten's royalist festival early in the pharaoh's reign. With Aten becoming a sole deity, Akhenaten started to proclaim himself as the only intermediary between Aten and his people, and the subject of their personal worship and attention, a feature not unheard of in Egyptian history, with 5th dynasty pharaohs such as Nyasr-Eni proclaiming to be sole intermediaries between the people and the gods Osiris and Ra. There is no evidence of revolt within the borders of Egypt itself. During the whole reign is surely ample proof that there was no such abandonment of his royal duties on the part of Akhenaten, as has been assumed. Indeed, several letters from Egyptian vassals notified the pharaoh that they have followed his instructions, implying that the pharaoh sent such instructions. The Amarna letters also show that vassal states were told repeatedly to expect the arrival of the Egyptian military on their lands, and provide evidence that these troops were dispatched and arrived at their destination. Dozens of letters detail that Akhenaten and Amnhotep III sent Egyptian and Nubian troops, armies, archers, chariots, horses, and ships. Only one military campaign is known for certain under Akhenaten's reign. In his 2nd or 12th year, Akhenaten ordered his viceroy of Kush Tuthmos to lead a military expedition to quell a rebellion and raids on settlements on the Nile by Nubian nomadic tribes. The victory was commemorated on two stelae, one discovered at Amata and another at Buin. Egyptologists differ on the size of the campaign. Wolfgang Help considered it a small-scale police operation, while Alan Schulman considered it a war of major proportions. Other Egyptologists suggested that Akhenaten could have waged war in Syria or the Levant, possibly against the Hittites. Cyril Aldred, based on Amarna letters describing Egyptian troop movements, proposed that Akhenaten launched an unsuccessful war around the city of Gezer, while Mark Gabold argued for an unsuccessful campaign around Kadesh. Either of these could be the campaign referred to on Tutankhamun's restoration stela, if an army was sent to Drayton broaden the boundaries of Egypt. No success of their cause came to pass. John Coleman Darnell and Colleen Manassa also argued that Akhenaten fought with the Hittites for control of Kadesh, but was unsuccessful. The city was not recaptured until 60 to 70 years later, under Seti I. Overall, archaeological evidence suggests that Akhenaten paid close attention to the affairs of Egyptian vassals in Canaan and Syria, though primarily not through letters such as those found at Amarna, but through reports from government officials and agents. Akhenaten managed to preserve Egypt's control over the core of its Near Eastern Empire, which consisted of present-day Israel, as well as the Phoenician coast, while avoiding conflict with the increasingly powerful and aggressive Hittite Empire of Suppilulium I, which overtook the Mitanni as the dominant power in the northern part of the region. Only the Egyptian border province of Amurru in Syria around the Orontes River was lost to the Hittites when its ruler Aziru defected to the Hittites, ordered by Akhenaten to come to Egypt. Aziru was released after promising to stay loyal to the pharaoh, nonetheless turning to the Hittites soon after his release.